Welcome back. Well, the coronavirus outbreak is straining the US Postal Service. Mail volume has already plunged by the largest percentage since the Great Recession, and increasing the worry here that the Postal Service could run out of money soon. So for more on this, I want to bring in Fredric Rolando, president of the National Association of Letter Carriers. And Mr. Rolando, thanks so much for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start with the current fiscal or financial situation that the post office is in right now. We had Representative Jerry Connolly, he's a Democrat out of Virginia, and he was saying that the current coronavirus crisis is, quote, in many ways the final straw for the U.S. postal system. How dire is the financial situation right now?
Well, for the first several years, the Postal Service revenues from the sale of postage, we don't use tax dollars, has exceeded the expenses, the operational expenses to process and deliver the mail. What's going on now with the virus is the letter mail is drying up because the economy has shut down, and the Postal Service is projecting a loss of maybe 50 to 60% of that letter volume. So what we're looking for is appropriations from the Congress to replace that lost revenue from the lost letter mail to get us through the pandemic.
So as it stands right now, obviously there's been pressure. There's been a lot of calls from a number of lawmakers that Congress needs to step in, that we need to help the U.S. Postal Service. As it stands right now, Treasury was authorized to loan $10 billion to the U.S. Postal Service. Now, it's not a bailout, so it's not what we've seen a lot of private companies get. Do you think the the U.S. Postal Service, needs more help from Congress and the administration at this point?
Yes, the Postal Service doesn't need more debt. What they need is to be in a position that they were in before the virus, after the virus. And they really just need an appropriation to replace those lost revenues that are strictly from the virus.
It's interesting because we've had Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, who was actually quoted today, and he was saying that we authorized over that $10 billion of loans. And he's saying my team is already actively working on that with the Postal Service if they need the money, and we're dealing with that. So are you saying that you do need the money right now, that you think that that might be a viable option at this point, or simply a loan, that $10 billion is not what you're welcoming at this point?
No, the $10 billion with the apparent strings that are attached to that with regard to raising parcel prices isn't what we need at all. The rates for parcels are not the issue during this virus. The issue is the loss of the letter volume and the revenue that comes along with that.
It's interesting because we also had, President Trump has made some critical remarks in regard to the U.S. postal system recently, and today he was actually quoted saying that the Postal Service is a joke because they are handing out packages for Amazon and other internet companies, and every time they bring a package, they lose money on it. The post office should raise the price of a package by approximately 4 times. And then he went on to say, if they don't raise the price, I'm not signing anything. What's your response to President Trump?
Well, I would say that the administration is grossly misinformed with regard to postal finances before the pandemic and during the pandemic. The Postal Service is the only universal delivery and communication network that the country has. We go to 160 million homes and businesses every day. We support a $1.6 trillion industry and over 1 million jobs. We deliver every day to everybody's home 6-7 days a week, prescription drugs, virus communications, test kits, online purchases, last mile delivery for UPS, FedEx, Amazon, financial transaction, medical supplies, no matter where you live. And I would say that the Postal Service and its employees are absolutely no joke.
Yeah, I want to talk about your employees just because at this time, obviously, with the threat of coronavirus, safety is such an important issue in keeping your employees safe. What is the U.S. Postal Service doing to keep their employees safe at this point? Have you put new procedures into place in order to do this?
Yeah, and that's our number one priority. On an hourly basis, on a daily basis, we communicate with the Postal Service with regard to supplies, whether it's wipes, whether it's hand sanitizer, whether it's masks, whether it's gloves, quarantine protocols, distancing practices. We've got some 30,000 locations, and so the communication can be very difficult sometimes to identify the places that are lacking supplies or protocols. And we work, like I said, on a daily basis to identify those places and correct them, because that is the number one priority in our minds right now, is to protect our employees.
Fredric, I want to switch topics here just a little bit and talk about a vote by mail. Now, it has to be, obviously, it is related to the coronavirus, but Democrats across the country, they've been pushing to expand voting by mail in response, obviously, to COVID-19. This comes ahead of the November election, but they've run into a little bit of opposition from the GOP. So it's interesting when we take a look at what Americans' response to this potentially will be. And a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll found that 2/3 of voters back the vote by mail for November election. What's the US Postal Service's ability to follow through on this? Is there enough funding there? What do you need from Congress at this point in order to make this a possibility?
Well, whatever the states decide, we stand ready to expand our longstanding role in that process as the states decide to engage in vote by mail.
All right, Fredric, Rolando, thanks so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. President of the National Association of Letter Carriers, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.